Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The vCIO Myth. Are you really a trusted advisor? I'm Amber Noble, a marketing specialist at Barracuda MSP, and I'm happy to be moderating today's session. Today, I'm joined by Rob Danser, a product specialist at TruMethods, and Gary Pica, president of TruMethods. Being a true pioneer of the MSP landscape, Gary has built up a top-performing business career and training process. During today's educational webinar, Gary will take us through his steps to improve and transform the vCIO process to become a best-in-class practice. Before we get started, let's do some brief housekeeping. During the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to share them using the questions or chat panels to the right of the Zoom webinar screen. At the conclusion of the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete a brief polling survey. Please take a moment to tell us what you think so we can continually improve the content and quality of our online events. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Gary to begin today's presentation. Take it away, Gary.
Hey, Amber, thank you so much. And I want to thank Barracuda for having us and allowing us to spread this message. It's been a great relationship over a number of years with blogs and webinars, and you guys are always working to try to help the community in terms of education and finding sources for that. So we're really glad to play a role in it. And this session, the vCIO myth, are you really a trusted advisor, is so timely. So again, I'm joined today by Rob Danser. He's our myITprocess product specialist. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Gary. How you doing?
I'm doing great. One of the things that we're going to talk about today, really focusing on beginning just how this kind of fits into MSP success today more than ever, and then some of the misconceptions around it. Everyone there's this general term, people say, yeah, well, we're a trusted advisor. And again, the joke that we make, Rob, is, do you have any advisors you don't trust? Right? So
Exactly.
if you're in the IT business and someone pays you $1 and you give them some advice, they trust you to some degree. But that's a long way from what we're going to paint in terms of vCIO. So we're going to talk about some of the common issues we see. We're going to see our definition of vCIO, and then we're going to do at the end a little gut check so you can compare your current process to where it is now. And, you know, Rob, I built 2 top-performing MSPs. One that I owned and operated every day for 12 years here in Philadelphia that was sold to Mindshift. We had over 7,000 endpoints under management. And then another one in the same marketplace here that while I've owned TruMethods, that we have a young president that ran that, still runs it. But this process we're going to talk about today has been the key to success, the sales success. The fact that we ran at my first MSP at over 30% net profit, all of it starts and ends with changing your perspective and your execution around this process. So with that, just real quick, because this is all content, I'll bring this up at the end, but we just finished a brand new training manual, 22-page training manual. This is not an ebook. This is an actual vCIO training manual that we'll make available. If you go to TruMethods.com/vCIO, you can go ahead and download that. And of course, if you're not doing business or not familiar with the awesome things that Barracuda is doing, and they're expanding their stack, around backup, disaster recovery, security, and more, you definitely should check out what Barracuda is doing. Really important. All right, so with that, let's dive into some content. Rob, I always like to start with MSP common issues and relate back whatever we're doing to those issues. And today, through TruMethods, with our software myITprocess and our training program Formula One, we'll work with over 1,000 MSPs around the world. Okay, we have a peer group where we work with about 80 companies really closely, where we see them every quarter. So we stay really in tune to what's happening. Here's the common issues. 1, adding new MRR sales, monthly recurring revenue, getting new clients to come on board consistently and pay the right seat price. So be able to bring them in at least $150 on average per seat is really important. Those two things drive profitability and also scalability. So if you can't bring on new customers and you can't bring them on at the right price, you hit these impact zones where people get stuck. They get to 80 or 100 or 150 or 1,000 a month recurring revenue when we see them plateau there. And what we're going to talk about today around this vCIO process, if you can see it and understand it, can address every single one of these issues in your business. These are actually symptoms, Rob. One of the things that's changed about our industry has been the proliferation of the channel, the availability of tools, the kind of tools that are available in terms of the quality of them and the pricing of those tools. So what I like to say is, Rob, any IT person can walk into any industry event, go to the Solutions Pavilion with a credit card, and 10 minutes later, they can walk out an MSP, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I call that the 10-minute MSP. And they may have the exact same tools that you use. So the question I ask people is, if you've been in business for 5 or 10 or 15 years with all of that experience, can the 10-minute MSP deliver the same results that you can? And the answer is no, they can't, right? Even though they have the same tool set, but can the customer tell the difference? Because if they can't, okay, if they can't tell the difference, then you have a problem, right? You have a major problem. And that problem is that you can't compete at the level you want to compete, because it should be pretty easy for you to separate yourself from the 10-minute MSP. In fact, I'll go a little further in saying that where I think we're moving to, if you go to a couple shows every year and you talk to the vendors that are there and you see, how much money is being poured into the channel to make better security, better backup, better monitoring, better everything tools and easier access to it. It's almost like the industry is building like this black box, Rob. And at some point, you'll be able to go into your customer and drop in this black box, and they'll be backed up and they'll be secured. And a lot of the things that was the original MSP business, okay, is going to go away. Okay, and our value has to be built on top of that magic box. Our value has to be built in a way that we maximize all the things that's valuable about us, and that's our knowledge and experience. So the way we look at it, if you look at perceived value, is we look at this, we break the business up into 5 service delivery areas. Support, centralized services, that's your stack. That's your really critical stuff. That's your RMM, that's your backup, that's your security stack, that's your cloud stack, all of that. And then professional services. So we still upgrade, move things to the cloud, replace things to the cloud, put things, upgrade things on premise. We still do professional services. Usually that's the billable work that we do, project work. Then something that we have coined the term for our customers at TruMethods, so we call technology success. This is where we capture our knowledge and experience in the process of standards and alignment in vCIO. We're going to touch on the standards and alignment briefly so you understand it, but we're going to spend really the time talking about that vCIO process and really getting you to think about how much of your resources are on your support desk, how much of your resources are on those low perceived value. Critical, they're super critical. In fact, they're more critical today than ever before because everyone expects that you do them well, whether you do or not, okay? But the value is going to come from your knowledge and experience, and that's encapsulated in technology success, and that's also where we're going to impact the business results of customers. So this is really critical concept to think about.
And that's one of the nice things about the way the stack is moving and the way that they're developing that black box, right, Gary, is that it gives more time. It makes it easier to do the lower perceived value stuff and gives you more time to focus on the higher stuff, the things that are going to add true value to the business.
Yeah, real quick, let me go back to this. When I got to the new MSP 6 years ago, they pretty much only had support some centralized services, and some professional services. They had an owner who did some meetings every quarter, but after you go through the rest of our content today, it wasn't a vCIO process, okay? And so as we saw us mature, as we saw us go from a seat price over those years of $100 a seat to over $165 a seat, and we saw us scale to over 300,000 and our profitability go up, what was happening in the background is we had, relatively speaking, more resources on the technology success side and relative to how many we had. So as we start to move our resources to the high value area, everything changed in our business, Rob. So that's an awesome point. So let's tie it back to why we're here today. Delivering strategic value through the vCIO relationship not will be, it is the key to MSP success. And as the channel evolves, right, and end user issues start to get solved by software, a lot of the things we do today over time, this is the piece that can't be replicated. This is the piece that's unique to us. This is the piece that bigger MSPs with scale don't have an advantage over. They can do support desk better. They can do centralized services, maybe have a better data center and more resources. But this is around our knowledge and experience. This is our protection in the marketplace. This is what makes you special and why people do business with you. And the way I like to explain it is this. If you want to talk about the vCIO process and really at the highest level how you should view it. Business owners, SMBs, small business owners, our customers as MSPs, they look at their investments in two ways. They look at it either as an expense item. They have office cleaning, office supplies, computer support, phone, electric, internet, okay, all of those things. And they're trying to always reduce their SG&A because the less expense they have, the more profit they have. Other things they look at as functional areas, operations, sales, HR, finance, and IT should be one of those. And you see the difference because they invest in sales, they invest in operations, they use that word investment. They spend more money and they spend it more freely because they see the return they're going to have. If they invest more in sales, they can reach their goals by increasing sales. If they invest more in operations, they become more efficient and they can increase their capacity. It's the same thing with IT, although many of your customers may not view it that way. So how do you know? Number one, if your customer cares a lot whether you charge them, $4,000 a month or whether you charge them $3,000 a month, that means they look at you as an expense item. Because if you really think about someone who spends $4,000 a month, Rob, with an MSP, that company probably has $300,000 to $500,000 a month of payroll and overhead and other expenses. So what they pay us is a really small percentage. Whether it's $3,000 or whether it's $4,000, it's small. And if they thought that investing more would be an investment in the functional area and would support their strategic goals and impact those big costs in their business, Rob, do you think they'd care whether $1,000 a month one way or the other relative to their expenses if we could impact those big costs?
Most certainly not.
So if they care a lot about it, that means by definition, they're viewing you as an expense item. They're not making the connection that IT not only is a functional area, but it might be one of the most important ones. I mean, for most of our customers, Rob, as MSPs, their technology is way more complicated and way more strategic to their goals than their finance, right? Mm-hmm. But they're happy to pay their accountant every year, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and more the lovely thing is in today is that with so many SMBs, technology is becoming more and more and more entwined in the business that it's an easier conversation to have today, Garrett, than it was 10 years ago. And you can have it with more of your clients because technology is such an integral part of what they do, even if they don't know it.
And most of them know it today. Listen, I've been doing this 22 years. I was evangelizing this concept for many years. We don't have to evangelize it anymore. Owners, C-level people, they know the risks. It used to be we used to have to tell them about what was going on with viruses and those kind of things. Now they can turn on and listen to Lester Holt on the evening news talk about who got breached this week. Oh, Marriott, right? Yeah. And they know that Marriott got breached. They know the names of WannaCry. Like they know these things. So they're much more educated. So I think the conversation if you have the right solution, they're gonna take to it more. So think of it this way. We started out, if you've been in business a long time, just doing that break and fix, just fixing technology. Then we eventually built a practice around MSP to manage technology. Technology success is the next step. Okay, our process we're going to review that ultimately leads to the strategic relationship around standards, alignment, impact, and strategy is about delivering outcomes. So that's the next phase from fixing technology, MSPs manage technologies, and TSPs deliver outcomes, and it completely changes the value proposition and how your customer views you. So here's that process. It has two pieces to it in terms of technology success. The first one is alignment. That is developing standards and also using some industry standards. We'll show you what they look like, and performing continuous alignment to know where your clients are in and out of it. So we'll review that just over a couple slides to give you a real idea, because that's its whole, we have probably 8 hours of content just on that, but we're just going to give you the flavor. Then the rest of the time, we're going to focus on, as promised, this vCIO process, the business impact and developing a client strategy, how to do that, all the aspects of this job and what it means. So if you think about technology alignment, we put standards, Rob, in two categories, right? They're the general standards. That's what the things you see on the left here around infrastructure and security and hardware, software, business continuity, super important stuff, right? But there's also industry standards around NIST and HIPAA and GDPR, and there's others that all clients will be subject to a piece of these. And even if they're not, Rob, shouldn't everybody kind of know where their security is relative to NIST today, whether they're required to or not, like what their risks are?
Mm-hmm. It's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the way we describe it. Standards are this box. We have this box that we want all of our customers to be in, because when they're in that box, they have the lowest amount of noise created, the lowest amount of reactive tickets, the least amount of risk. This is where they can use technology to enable their strategic plan. That blob is the real world of where our customers' actual environments are. So the process of alignment is knowing what's in the box and what's out of the box, so that we can talk about, what the impact of that. And I have to say, Rob, if you don't have a box, all you have is a blob.
Oh yeah, it's blob.
And what if you have 20 customers?
Exactly, and that's not a fun business to run. It gets very noisy and very challenging. Just knowing from speaking to members and people who have been there, it can be a rough way to make a living.
Well, what we see is somebody's managing 1,000 seats. They should have 2 people on their support desk if they're managed inside the box. But if all they have is blobs, we see them. They have 4 or 5 people on the support desk. So their cost per seat for support is so outrageous, they can't generate enough high value things to command the price they want, and that's why they get stuck. So super important. And then organizing them. So the idea is to create a library of these things where you do it in a specific way. You have a question, is the security password policy in place? It's yes or no. You tell them how to find the answers and why you're asking. And one important thing is that when you set up your standards, you always want to do it in a yes-no mentality, so you can see clearly what's inside your policies and standards or industry standards and what's out of it. So we'd love to talk about this for the rest of the hour, but unfortunately, we got to get to the reason why you're here, and hopefully that paints a good picture, and this will be more meaningful now. The vCIO process, and we break that, Rob, up into 2 pieces, right? Business impact. And we say business impact, that means we're taking what's out of alignment and we're marrying it specifically with every business and their goals and their strategy to see what the impact of that misalignment will be on that customer, and then using that to build their what we call their strategic roadmap, right? Their IT roadmap of how they're going to make investments. And this is where we translate vCIO into real value, where people feel like it's now a functional area rather than an expense item. Rob, there's one question when I do live events that I always ask every time I get in front of people. How many people here feel like they are or have a vCIO function in their business, right? That trusted advisor. And almost every hand goes up, and they say everyone does, and we have QBRs. And I say, well, let me ask it a different way. Are you truly a vCIO, or are you actually, even though you think you're a vCIO, are you really a vCO? That's the question. All right. Do people want a little bit more on this? Okay, let's get to the punchline. Are you really a virtual Captain Obvious? Hey, your servers are old, Rob. You should replace them. Your backup doesn't work. You should upgrade it. Your email version is old. You should go to Office 365. Your licensing expired. You should renew it. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Rob,
I'm sure those questions have never been brought up before in a meeting with a business owner.
listen, here's the whole thing. Not that this isn't some of what we do, but here's the key. Do I need 15 years of experience to do this? Could a 10-minute MSP tell them the same thing? Yes. Does a business owner or a C-level executive or the person that drives strategy at your customer, do they want to sit in a meeting to tell you that stuff has to be renewed or it got old and need to be replaced? Do they see this as an investment, or do they see this basic advice, right, and the way we're presenting it as an expense item, right? So it's easy to see why that happens. So a virtual Captain Obvious, here's some of the things. They're not meeting with the real decision makers. They're meeting with non-DMs, points of contact. In a small business, they're not meeting with the owner or the C-levels, the people that make their strategy and control their budget. Their meetings center on ticket reports, SLAs, patch statuses, alarms, hardware life cycles, renewals. How do I know this? Well, because I was the first vCIO in the first MSP, and that's what my meetings look like in the beginning. I couldn't get the owner of a 30 or 40 person company to want to come back to a second meeting. I was shocked, Rob. I couldn't believe they weren't as interested in patch management as I was. I was fascinated, right? They could care less. You know why? There's no way they could relate that to where they are in their business. I was trying to justify what we paid by the work that we were doing in the tickets and not relating it as an investment. I was acting like an expense item, so they were treating me like one. And if you think about the words vCIO, it means Virtual Chief Information Officer, right? So if you look at what a CIO is in a business, by definition, it's someone in a business who understands they're on the strategy team. They're a functional area that they lead. They understand the plans and everything about how that business operates, and then they connect technology so that the CFO or the CEO can make decisions. So by definition, if you're not meeting with the decision maker or makers at every one of your customers, you're Captain Obvious by definition. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And you're trying to, you take this big report with all the stuff in it, because you think that if you jam enough stuff into a binder, and if you give them 100 pages, they're going to be, even if they don't look at it, they're going to be awestruck by, wow, these guys are really, this is why we pay them as much. Without understanding that, while that's important, it's really there to build the process for the result. It's not the result itself. Having all the stuff isn't the thing. It's what enables you to deliver the thing.
Yeah. So, what I would say is, when you get there, when your value proposition changes, when they start to see you as a functional area, and we're going to teach you how to do it in the next 35 minutes, okay? You're going to see them make more investments. You're going to see the right people show up to meetings. That's just, kind of what happens, rather than treating you like that, like just that expense item. And you can tell, like, people like to do these customer CSATs, right? They do their net promoter score and they say, well, our customers, they love us. Okay, they like you. Do they find you valuable? Because if they like you and your average seat price is $100 a seat, they like you, but they don't value you. If your average seat price you command and you have high retention at 150, 160, 170 a seat, guess what? They not only like you, but they value the relationship. They see it as an investment. So A real vCIO moves from a technical to a business relationship. They build an in-depth business profile on every customer. They know a lot about their customer's business and their customer's strategic plans, okay? They build strategic relationships, and they use technology alignment and business impact as the foundation to get to this strategy roadmap that we're going to show you, that is really the conduit of value for everything else you do to your customers. It's how you can judge how you're doing to build value, and it's how your customer will perceive value of the relationship moving forward. So just to kind of sum this up, virtual Captain Obvious is they're gathering technical information, spending time quoting, they're dealing with client escalations. They really kind of act like account managers, where vCIOs spend all their time creating strategic roadmaps, meeting with real decision makers, understanding their customer's business, and leveraging that data that we talked about from the technical alignment process. So let's get into the role, Rob. Let's start with the basics about how you design the role. So, like, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Like, most of the top end, and again, Rob, you're in charge of a vCIO community here, right, at TruMethods, that has hundreds of vCIOs in it, right?
Yes, sir.
The top ones, you have an elite group we call the champions, right? vCIO champions, and they don't just sit down and say, well, okay, we have 30 customers. We're going to see every customer every quarter, right?
No,
So
they wouldn't be able to get
this. And what's the process of how they give them the appropriate experience and how they know what their activities should be with each customer, so overall they can gauge their activities?
Well, the first step is it's based a lot of times on, as you have on the slide, the size of the clients they're dealing with, how complex an environment it is, and at the end of the day, how much they're paying the MSP. And that's how they start to figure out, on average, how often that they need to meet with that customer. There's a fourth, and it's a little bit of an X factor here, which is the customer themselves. So there's a little bit of wiggle room. This isn't set in stone. Some companies are just higher touch, some are less. And then what they do from there is, once they figure out if they have to meet, quarterly, biannually, I have a couple of VCOs that have some really big clients that they meet with on a monthly basis. They're part of basically their leadership meeting once a month. Basically, once they figure out that number, they can start to work backwards from there to figure out, okay, if I need to do this meeting, how many different alignments do I need to do? How much impact do I need to figure out? How many roadmaps do I need to complete? How many touches do I need to do on the client, to stay in contact with them, to be prepped up for those meetings? So they always work backwards. You start from the meetings and how often you have to meet, and then you can work backwards to figure out your activity level.
Yeah. So again, having done this, helped many people do it, and having done it with my two MSPs, we would sit down, look at all the customers as we implemented this, and go through one by one. And it's not really, and it should be pretty easy. It should correlate pretty much to their MRR. The more they spend usually means the more complex that they are. And that usually means you're going to see them more often. Like you said, you might have one or two big clients you see monthly, a bunch of other ones you see quarterly, some that you see, 2 or 3 times a year. And there might be some smaller ones that maybe you have these heartbeats or touches like in between where you're doing it over the phone, but maybe, you only need to see them once a year. So once you know what that is, now you can develop a playbook. And this is something we teach in our training program, because if you know that you need a certain amount of strategy meetings after you do that project for the customers you manage, you can divide that by how many per month you need, right? How many per quarter, how many per month, and even down to, on average, how many per week. This way, if you know you're tracking those activities and you're having the right amount of meetings each month and each quarter, when you get to the end of the year, you'll have done and delivered what you said you would for your customers. Without it, what happens is, without a playbook, you tend to just give all your time to the squeaky wheel, and maybe your best customers don't get the experience that they paid for or deserve, and you're not as valuable to them, Rob.
Or even, to even go another way, if there are people on the call today that when they heard, us talking about the vCIO concept, and they're like, oh my God, that's me. And they want to make this shift. this is so important to help you from sliding back into bad habits,
Yeah.
back account manager type tasks, and moving into the things that are really going to drive the role and the process forward. So yeah, tracking this activity and keeping an eye on it is critical. So important.
Not that different in sales. So when I ran my MSP, well, when I run this business as well, so we have playbooks for all of our teams, right? So we have playbooks for sales. So the salespeople, they're reporting their activities because it's a proactive job. So you have to manage activities to get results and be able, if you're not getting results, you want to tie it back to activity. Well, vCIO is the same way. So real quickly, once a week, I can sit down with the vCIO and say, okay, how was your week? What happened here? You know, did we meet our goals? Where are we for the month? Where are we year to date? Are we keeping up with our commitments? If not, why? What's happening? You know, are you getting pulled in too many directions? Or do we have a support desk issue and you're getting too many things escalated to you? Do we have an issue with our technology alignment process where you're not getting the information you need? So it allows us really to troubleshoot other areas of the business in a short 15-minute meeting. All right, so let's talk now about the meat of this thing, which is building these strategic relationships. And Rob, we kind of, what you have developed with our, along with input from our champions, right, our vCIO champions, is these 4 pieces, right?
Yeah. So the idea here is the first step is you have to be able to understand how a business operates and how it thinks. And the first part of that is, you know, what does the business want? Do they want to grow? Do they want to stay the same size? Are they going through a shrinking period? Do they want to be, you know, the top value provider in their vertical? Where do they want to get to? And you need to understand that because that's going to influence everything you recommend for them. It all comes back to this. And then, you know, what are the possible technology risks that come with those goals? Okay, you say you want to grow top line revenue by 20%. Here's some of the new challenges you're going to run into.
And also opportunities,
Yeah.
right? So both sides, there's risk and there's opportunities around technology to enable that process. Yeah.
And then be able to build that into some type of repeatable profile, to be able to put that into some type of either system or process or note that you can kind of build up and start to have this stuff documented. It doesn't just live in your head. Gary, one of the things I see a lot is, especially when companies are starting this process, this is generally held by an owner. You know, who's kind of goes and meets with the clients. It's been like that. You know, that's the way it was, right? You had the business 10 years, you have clients you've talked to forever. And you have all this information in your head, which is great. You can just recall these facts. You have this long relationship. They know you and they understand you. And then one day you decide you want to spend more time running the business and you hire, let's say you hire me. How am I supposed to do that without that information, without that relationship documented and put somewhere? It's not possible.
This is why we're here. That's the challenge that I came into as we scaled. I did sales in vCIO. When I reached the point where I couldn't do the vCIO anymore, and I thought to myself, this is going to be a disaster because, you know, I have, you know, a business acumen of that I bring to this where I can cut a lot of corners and cheat and get there on the fairway, but no one I hire can. And that's what made us develop a process. And to my surprise, someone working 40 hours a week on this with the right process that we're going to explain actually got better results than me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the awesome thing about it. So, yeah. So, and we'll dive more into the business profile, right? And then the next piece is that planning, right? So to create a plan that incorporates those business goals and the mitigation of risk, and also, you know, to exploit the opportunities, and then finally present, right? Discuss the plan, adjust it, achieve a consensus. That means, Rob, consensus means between us and what we're recommending and how we view things, because we know something about their business, but more about technology. They know a lot less about technology and more about their business. So we want to reach a consensus with the client.
Yeah, it's a certain level of, you know, they're not going to necessarily take every single thing that you put on the table or things make it shifted because of business priorities. But that's why it's so important to, you know, marry the technical with the business information you discovered. And then, hey, you know, if you choose not to do these things, you should just know what it could mean. It could mean X, Y, and Z. Are you okay with it?
So let's walk through. Let's start with discovery, then we'll go through plan and present. So with this discovery, maybe consider building a business canvas. If you Google this, this is a general business concept that's out there called a canvas. And you can even go, I think there's a Wikipedia on it. You can download a PDF of this, but just kind of takes you through to be able to understand, like, who are the stakeholders in the business? What are their revenue streams? What are their costs? And it also includes opportunities and growth. So you know a little bit about what some of the risks are and like a little bit of a SWOT analysis almost. So this real simply on one page starts to paint that for you, okay? Then you really start to fill in, and this is the key stuff. So who are your clients? This is what we're asking our clients. Who are their clients and why do they buy from them? So what's their competitive advantage? You know, are they a big player in a small market, a small player in a big market? Are they the high price person, the low price person? Are they a high margin business, low margin business? What area do they serve? What are the critical operations to their business? Like, what are the key things that make them go? Who are their suppliers and partners? Who do they deal with? What do they see as their most critical KPIs in their business? And then, of course, what are their business goals? Like, what does success look like to them over the next 2 to 3 years? When we start to learn all these things about their business and we have the alignment information, the picture almost starts to paint itself, Rob, right? About the questions we should be asking, what we should be recommending. And when we recommend it and tie it back to these things, they're going to see it differently. Let me give you an example. Like, we dealt with some manufacturers in our first MSP. I met guys who, they wouldn't think twice about spending like $3.5 million on a new piece of shop floor equipment because they knew what the ROI was going to be from that new piece of equipment. But I tell them they have to make $10,000 in security upgrades to protect them, and they look like I shot their dog, right? Why? Why is it easier to spend $3 million in 10? Well, because they understand their business, they understand the investment of that functional area, and I hadn't gotten there yet because I didn't know enough about their business, right? So if you don't know all this information or more about your customers, you're not a vCIO. You can't possibly be. How can you make recommendations beyond Captain Obvious about what's old or needs to be renewed, about where they should go to and what their roadmap should look like in the next quarter, the next year, the next 3 years, if we don't even understand what they're trying to do for the business and the role technology needs to play?
Mm-hmm.
Hey-o! See, I'm all fired up now, Rob. Right? So you want to use technology alignment to assess that technology risk. So where are they out of alignment with our standards? Where are they out of alignment with those compliance standards, those standards? And then what does it mean to them? Because it's different for everybody. Let's just say you have some security issue, right, Rob? And you're a flower shop. Well, it might not be the biggest thing in the world, right? If you're a manufacturer who does business with the government, okay, and subject to DFARS, it's a major issue, right? It's an issue that's so major that you could lose a contract, you could lose revenue, profitability, like your exposure is massive, and you might not even know it, right? So what are those misalignments, and then tying it directly based on because we know about their business. I was talking to one of our customers once, and who was local. They were here, right, in Philadelphia. They were at one of our seminars, and I asked them about this and some things about it, and we got talking about a customer. I actually knew the company, and I happened to know from years past, because I knew somebody there, that they do business with the Department of Defense. This person didn't even know it. They didn't even know that. How are you going to be a virtual CIO or make recommendations if you don't even know their requirements, right?
Yeah.
So once we get there, the recommendations could be a project to implement new technology. Listen, we got to put different perimeter security in place. We need to we need to change the way, in order to reach your sales goals, we need the way that your people access securely applications. So we need to give them access with technology in different ways when they're outside the office, right? It could be simple configuration changes. Maybe there's just some things that are out of alignment that we're going to do for them as part of our process, and we want to let them know. Or complex configuration changes. Maybe we realize that their Active Directory is a mess and it's not going to comply with us being able to manage it. And so maybe there's a small project that they're going to pay us for to go in and clean that up over a couple days. It could just be a change on how they utilize technology or training of their team. Maybe we're going to have some cybersecurity training that we're going to put in place so they know what to do and what not to do. So it could be a whole bunch of things. Some of them could be revenue generating to us, and many of them are, but not all of them, Rob.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're leveraging that technology alignment data, and these recommendations require more than technology knowledge. The power is to have all of that detailed alignment information, all of that, business profile information. And when we tie those two things together, that's where the rubber is going to meet the road. So now we start to get, Rob, towards that from business impact to client strategy, where after we review the business impact of misalignments, we talk to the client. They have two choices. They can follow our recommendations, or they can change their expectations and live with the results, right? So well, here's an example of that, Rob. We tell them, and some of them we may not be able. I'll give you two examples. Some of them may be ones where we're willing to live with it if they are, and others we might not be. So the first case would be, we tell them they got this old server, based on the age and how it's configured and backed up. If it goes down, they're going to be down for at least 2 business days. Now they may say, hey, the way we use that server, that's not an issue. We have a backup of it. We can live without it for 2 days. That's fine. Or they may say, well, wait a minute, that's a line of business app, right? We can't be without that for more than 4 to 6 business hours. Awesome. You can change the technology, or you can change your expectations. If we don't have that conversation, Rob, and the server goes down, whose fault is it?
Oh, that's ours.
Yeah. Can you have that conversation with the customer after the server is down?
You could try. It won't go well.
Yeah, you want to make a customer mad? Wait till their server goes down and then tell them it's their fault. Yeah, no bueno, as we like to say in the business, right? So now they have this information. Some of them might be non-negotiable. One of our customers just added a bunch of new security tools to their stack. It raised their cost per seat by like $3. So to keep their 70% gross margin, they had to raise the average seat price by $10. So for their average customers, anywhere from $200 to $400 a month. So the owner and the vCIO, over the course of the quarter in their strategy meetings, they either called or met with and just said, hey, listen, you're dealing with some security risks that weren't here like a year ago or 2 years ago. We've made these changes, implemented it. Here's what it is, and I can't make it optional for you. And they had enough of the strategic relationship that they went out to 40 customers, and all 40 customers, not only did they do it and willingly pay more, but they thanked them for the fact that they're on top of all that stuff and keeping them where they can go and run their business. So that's the difference between technical conversation and a business conversation, Rob. Am I painting a picture with these examples?
I think so.
Yeah. So Jennifer asked, if our goal is to be the vCIO and come to the table, specifically the DM, and bring something of value, what do we bring to the table? So I think we're getting there right now, and then we'll kind of culminate it in what we show you. We'll show you exactly what it should look like. But Jennifer, first off, what you're bringing is the combination of understanding their business and knowing what their technology risks based on alignment is, and you're bringing them the information to make decisions on that they probably have never had delivered in that way before. You're going from a technical to a business conversation. It's your job, Jennifer, to show the client the impact of their technology decisions. So we want to discuss the plan with them like in an agenda. So you sit down. Look, there may be 20 things you need to talk to them about. You might not want to go in and talk about 20 things. You may pick the 5 most important ones. You have some issues with switches. You have some of them they bring to you. They're going to be opening a new site, and there's going to be a whole bunch of things. that have to happen for that technology-wise to support it, to open up a new site. They have some security issues around firewalls and maybe mobile device, and they maybe have some mundane stuff like some some upgrades and issues that affect their line of business apps. So you're going to go in there with an agenda, and then from that agenda, you want to summarize the business and technology risks into a long-term actual plan. So, hey, it could start with a 3-year budget, but you want to be real specific around the next year in each quarter. So here's Q3 of 2018, Q4, here's Q1 of 2019 here. So we have a rolling 4 quarters that we're laying this out. And as they accept it and say, yeah, we agree to do that, it hits their budget. So now they can go through and they can see their budget with you over those quarters. Now, what's really important about this, Rob, is now this is basically how they're viewing where they need to be. This is the lens by which they're viewing their investments, okay? And it's also the lens by which they're viewing the value they get from your relationship. Everything else you do, they're expecting you're going to answer their calls and support them. They expect you're going to back them up. They expect you're going to secure them. They expect all those things. This is where the business value and hopefully to answer Jennifer's question, that comes rushing through. Another thing that happens here, Rob, once we see our customers get this out across their whole customer base, guess what they can do? They can look at the next quarter and say, what do we have out in accepted projects in the next quarter, right? And they can kind of gauge what it's going to look like, so they know how to start planning their resources to maximize it and plan those projects so that they can increase their utilization around professional services, increase their margins around professional services, and drive up their margins to the bottom line, because every project is not based on the server that just went down. Okay, these are all being planned far in advance. Super powerful. I lived by this my entire career, knowing not only what our backlog was, that was projects that were signed but not delivered, but being able to peek out a quarter and ahead. And with that, one, based on how much they were spending with us, I could gauge in general what their engagement and how valuable we were with them, because if they're not taking our recommendations, we're not really a trusted advisor. But I was also able to plan out our professional services, 8, 12, 16 weeks in advance. That's really a great luxury. So creating this roadmap, Rob, it's not just A to B to C, right? So having that relationship is, isn't about having the client always implement everything that we want. It's about them making good decisions, right? And it's about them taking the risks of what they don't take from us. Our goal is to enable our clients to achieve their desired business results, and we marry our process and knowledge with their desires and business goals. So putting what we want first, right, without this knowledge, that's the definition of Captain Obvious. So done right, this is not a sales position. This is a true consulting position, but so many more proposals get signed, Rob. Right?
Yeah,
because they're a result. They're not our goal is to sign them. It's the result of what happens from the relationship.
Yeah, and if you don't have that business knowledge to back it up, you're always going to put what you want first because it's the only thing you know. You're not doing it maliciously. It's just that you don't have the understanding of the business to understand that B even exists yet. So It's really important. That's why we spend so much time, and we spend so much time today talking about that preparation part of understanding the business, because without it, you can't help but be a virtual Captain Obvious.
So let me give you one more kind of fun concept, and then we're going to do a little gut check for you so you can see where you are. Hey, Gary, my clients don't take our recommendations. What should I do? Here's the thing. Customers don't take your recommendations when they can't see the impact on their business. Period. You've translated technical knowledge to them. You haven't translated the business impact. That might be because you don't know enough about their business or had the inclination, or maybe wasn't how you viewed this in the past, but you will in the future. Because once you connect those two things, business owners are good at making those decisions. When they're good at making business decisions, they're bad at making technology decisions. So we have to make them make business decisions that just so happens to be accompanied by technology changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing here, someone asked, how do you get sales or account executives to sell the vCIO? Well, here's the thing, Mike. In the model that we teach at TruMethods, they don't have to. So we know what our vCIO costs are per seat. We know that an average vCIO, if they're handed all this information and they're using, kind of the process we talked about, they're going to manage anywhere from 35 to 45 accounts. If I know on average how many seats per account we have, I can tell you how many seats they can manage. And if I know what I pay them per month, I know what my cost per seat is. I'm baking it in. So this is something that we don't have to sell them the services. One, I'm already getting paid 70% gross margin because it's baked into my seat price. So they're paying me 70% gross margin, everyone, okay, it baked into my seat price. And they're going to generate more non-recurring revenue. This is a home run, okay, in terms of how they look at it. And I'll give you some of those in our gut check, what that should look like. But I'll just tell you this. Be genuinely curious. It's such a fun job. When I did it, when I taught people to do it, their job is to go out and meet with business people and learn about their businesses. And after we taught them this process of what questions to ask and how to look at it, after they did it with 4, 5, 6 different customers, an amazing thing happened. They started getting pattern recognition, to seeing what the commonalities is, the way people run their business and how technology ties to it. And they became way more interesting to the customers, right? They would say, well, we have this goal in sales, or we have this obstacle we're dealing with in marketing. Hey, I was talking to another customer about this that has a similar way they approach it. Let me tell you some of the things that they did right with it. And let me tell you a few of the technology things we did that would enable that. It's amazing how after I had done this and I had 10 clients and 20 clients that I was doing this for, it's like I learned so much about business. I learned more about business from those conversations. And when I was also the salesperson, it was basically the same process in sales. I'd ask the same kind of questions and they found me super interesting and they were more willing to buy. So stop trying to show your value on what you know about IT, and start trying to understand what it's about, what it means to your customer. So look for both risks and capture those opportunities in order to be able to do that. So here's your gut check. 1, can a vCIO manage at least $120,000 a month of monthly recurring revenue? If they can't, they're probably not a vCIO. They're probably more of an account manager or a salesperson because they can't manage enough accounts at the right value. Do vCIOs meet with the real decision makers that make the plans for your customers and hold the budget? If they're not, or not in most of them, again, by definition, they're not a vCIO. Are you generating 30% of MRR and NRR? I mean non-recurring revenue. When I say non-recurring revenue, not product, I mean services. If you do $100,000 a month of recurring revenue, you should generate $30,000 a month of non-recurring services based on the advice recommendations that they're accepting from you. If they don't, you're an advisor, but you're not as trusted as you think. Also, Rob, what happens when people are making more and the right investments in their technology? What happens to the ticket counts and noise levels in that business?
They drop significantly.
Yeah. And our costs go down and our customers' value go up. In my first MSP, we had 7,000 endpoints under management, and we only generated 1,400 tickets, okay, per month. Think about that for a second. 7,000 endpoints. We had 4 or 5 people on support desk. Imagine how much of our costs were in these high value alignment and vCIO areas. And then also imagine with that low noise level, how productive our customers were. Do you think they cared whether they paid us $4,000 or $4,500 or $5,000? I can tell you they did not care. Okay. And there's the last piece. Can your MSP command the right seat price? If you can't command at least $150 on average per seat or higher these days as a security stack grows, you have a value problem, and here's where it lies. And you can buy more tools, and you can go back and compete with the 10-minute MSP and say that you have better support and say you patch computers better, but they're already assuming that everyone can do that. You're not going to drive your seat price up that way. And does your vCIO understand your customer's business? Ask them, hey, tell me about this customer. Where are the revenue streams? What's their profitability? The market, all the things we talked about. If they don't have that deep level of understanding, they're not going to be able to generate the kind of NRR that we talk about, because they're not going to make the right recommendations that are tied to business decisions where those customers are going to be willing to invest. It all ties together, okay? So you might be off track if your vCIO spends all their time putting out fires, not touching enough revenue, not generating enough non-recurring revenue, spending too much time on proposals, they're managing products, meeting with non-DMs. They're all the signs that say you're off track. This is it, man. This is the gold rush. There's never been, right now in my 22 years, there's never been more, the top MSPs, the top 20% of them that have this process, they're selling more recurring revenue at a higher price, and they're generating more non-recurring revenue as a percentage than ever in the time that I've been in this, right? So build those high value relationships we talked about today in process. This is the time you want to do it. So we have a couple questions I want to answer, but just real quick, Rob. One, I want to thank Barracuda for allowing us to share this information today. If you're not familiar, if you've not talked to somebody at Barracuda about their suite, and man, they've come so far in terms of, you know, since the time that I've known Barracuda for a long time, but since the time where they made the investment acquired Intronis that we work closely with, they've developed a stack that is really awesome for MSP. So send them an email at sales@barracudamsp.com or give them a call. You want to see what they're doing. And in terms of us, here's what we do. We have 200 hours of training to train people on how to build a top MSP. But the core of it is our software, myITprocess, that helps you with this process in terms of managing your default templates and allowing you to build that strategic roadmap. We also have a bunch of those standards already built available in myITprocess that you can use out of the box. So if you want more information about us, we'll give you something that can help you. We just finished this 22-page training manual that's on the vCIO process and reviews a little bit on standards and alignment. This is not an ebook. This is a 22-page training manual. So if you want to get access to this, just go to TruMethods, no E in true.com/vCIO. We'll send you this, and we'll answer any questions you have about this process or how you can implement it. So a couple questions. We're almost at the top of the hour. One, I think we answered. Steve asked what software we're using to track this. So we're using myITprocess. And then the other question we got is, how do you start this with your existing customers? And that's a great question.
I love that question.
Yeah. So Rob, you want to take the first shot at it, or you want me to take the first shot at it?
I'll give my perspective on it.
Go ahead.
What I would do is, knowing nothing more about your business, right? Just knowing this, how did you get started? I would say choose a couple of companies that are probably on the higher end of the MRR scale for your business, however you range that, and set up a meeting. If it's not a meeting, set up a lunch. And go into that meeting, either yourself or with the person who designated the vCIO, and start with asking some of those business questions we talked about earlier. You know, start giving them, say, hey, look, we're starting a new program. We want to learn more about our clients' businesses. Tell us some stuff about you. And go into that meeting and try to learn as much as you possibly can about that business and who they are and how they operate and how they value. And I think that's how you start. From there, you can start to build out a strategic roadmap for those couple of clients. And you can say, hey, look, based on our lunch, here's what I think is important to you.
So I think that's a great approach. Let me just give one other little twist to it. So what I did in the beginning was just what Rob said. I went out, I saw how they took to it. Then I went out and got a couple new clients at the right price who valued this. So I could go to those same clients and say, listen, we started this process. Did you find it valuable? We'd like to do it as part of it. This is what we're doing for new customers. Let me tell you what some of the results are. We're driving down their noise. They're making better investments. They feel better. Does it make sense that that's happening? Great. Look, here's what the difference in investment is. Do you think it makes sense to invest $500 a month more, $1,000 a month more, so that we can be able to provide this on top of everything else we do to you? And guess what happened after we had that confidence in what we were delivering? A percentage of them, a nice percentage of them, went and did it. I think what happens is when people come into our program and we have them check their seat price and cost and margins and they realize they're off, they go back and they just want to raise the price of their customer. That's a really hard thing to do. I say go back with a value and a different process and make them, just show them how they can invest in that. When you do that, and guess what? There may be a percentage of your clients that aren't going to, over time, they might be the wrong clients that don't value this. You'll have to deal with it. So hey, one more question, and we're at the top of the hour, but I want to answer David's question. How do you approach companies that are a little bit larger and they have an internal IT department? So listen, I feel like in some ways that's easier because they're more mature, but they're usually only, that IT department is usually built with staff and resources to handle the day-to-day stuff. So some of what, here we have this poll up that people can answer while we're doing this. So if everybody could, while I'm answering this, go ahead and answer that poll about how valuable this was to you. But David, so what you can do is we have deals sometimes that we call point of contact, where all we're going in is we're giving them our centralized services stack, we're doing our alignment process, and we're providing this strategic relationship to them. We're not even doing their support desk. They have people that do the day-to-day. Larger companies, we find this more valuable, and they understand it more quickly. And if you can get, if you're big enough, like you have to have some scale before you can add value to them. So we didn't start to sell these things when I first got to my new MSP, but as we scaled and we had enough employees and our bench was deep, we went to some of these larger companies, and 20% of our customer base doesn't create any support tickets. So it's really, really great. And those people really buy the value because they speak our language. Huge win on those, David. So Rob, this was super fun. We're a couple minutes over, but I'm so thankful to Barracuda for letting us do this today.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Rob, Gary, I wanna thank you both for letting us work with you as well. It was a pleasure on our part to listen to you talk today. And I definitely want to push that training manual one more time while everyone finishes up answering the survey.
Yep.
If you want to just say that link for them one more time.
Yeah, so that's www.TruMethods, no E in true, TruMethods.com/vCIO, and you can go ahead and download that document. It's awesome.